morning. Oh, a little loud here. I think we're going to get started. Amanda, if you want to just step up, and I think your slides are loaded and everything's ready to go. And we'll ask questions if that's okay as we go through. Okay.
Yes, please feel free to interrupt me, or there'll be time at the end as well.
Sounds great.
So,
okay, great.
Thank you. Good morning. I believe I've met all of you, but I'm Amanda Wonke, the CEO at DART. And just want to thank Polk County for your continued investment in DART. Want to thank Supervisor Conley for her service on the commission this last year, and welcome to the new supervisors, Holm and Altringer. Unfortunately, Supervisor Holm saw a similar presentation about a month ago in Ankeny. I've gone to all our member communities, and Polk County's last, so he's going to get some repeats. He'll probably have new and hard questions for me. I know that as elected officials and for us as the staff who are administering programs, that line between fiduciary responsibility and making sure that we provide the services our community needs is hard. And what I want you to know, if there's anything you hear from today's presentation, is that DART takes your investment seriously, and we are working to make sure that you and the community are getting a good return on investment. And so what I'll talk a little bit about today, hold on, there we go, is talk first a little bit about the value we provide, some steps we've been taking to operate efficiently, and then where we're going with Reimagine DART. So again, when we first talk about the value, talking about the value as a whole, it's really important to know and that public transit is an economic driver. Last year we provided 3.5 million trips, more than the airport, which I say in a friendly way because we both support each other strongly. Nearly 9 out of 10 of those trips were to make or spend money. And so again, every trip on DART is really a support for our economy, but it is also really about social equity and well-being as well. DART really has a service that currently is focused on and serves the transit dependent. And you can see that here when you look at the slides about who uses DART. If you look, we only have 4% who have a household income of $75,000 or more. And when you look at that chunk that is under $40,000 for a whole household, we are serving a lot of people who meet the poverty line. And we also serve a lot of people who don't have driver's licenses, and that can be due to disabilities, it can be due to decisions they've made, whether it's to just not drive or whether they've had their license revoked. It can be due to people new to our country who don't have that ability yet. So there's lots of reasons people are using it, but really a lot about social equity. So DART was formed almost 20 years ago as a regional entity, and Polk County was really key in that formation. We came together to do this as a region because we know people don't just travel within one city and stop at the city line. We also know, as we're looking at the future, that our competitors are investing in public transit. Omaha has put in a light rail line, they have put in a BRT line. They're in the middle of putting in a streetcar line. Iowa City is testing free fares for all of their residents. We know Rochester, Minnesota is launching a $150 million BRT line. So we know that other communities are investing in transit, and we just want to be aware of that as we look at how we compete as a region. So let's talk a little bit first about the service within Polk County. Again, last year we provided about 3.5 million trips, average weekday ridership of 12,000 rides a day. And you can see a little bit here our service map and where things are. And also just knowing too, we're not just the large fixed route buses. We also have paratransit services, which I'll talk more about, door-to-door services for those who are unable to use them. We have our caravan service, which operates between our region and other regions of the state to connect people to jobs. And that is a program we've really seen and continue to see a lot of changes in. So there's a lot of different modes that DART is supporting. So as we talk again a little bit more about Polk County, again, the majority of our services, so when I'm talking routes and other components, it all serves Polk County other than some small parts of Dallas County. But you can see here, we do have a partnership specific with Polk County for some contracted services. And specifically, we work a lot with the Department of Community, Family, and Youth Services. We work on group meal sites, so senior meal sites. That was about 20,000 trips in FY24. The top destinations for those were Southside, Ankeny, and West Des Moines. In addition, there are times where the Department of Community, Family, and Youth will determine that someone needs a service because they can't afford it. So your staff is determining that someone needs a ride, either they can't afford it, they're a senior, they're disabled. They're making those decisions and contracting with us. The top destinations for those services are Hy-Vee, Goodwill, and medical appointments. In addition, Polk County has been a supporter for a long time of ways that we can make sure we are helping those in our community who rely on transit and who are financially challenged and or need to learn how to the system to be able to do that. So there's a few ways you support free and reduced fare programs. The Veterans Ride for Free program is something I'm really proud we launched probably about 7 years ago now in a partnership where all veterans can show their veteran ID, and Polk County helps pay for that. I know it is something that has been hugely appreciated by our veterans, and they are people who are, again, relying a lot on it to get to medical appointments and other things. So that is a partnership we have. Ride to Thrive is our low-income service, and so what this allows is if someone qualifies for food assistance, work assistance, rental assistance, they can then qualify for the Ride to Thrive program. We just started this in this iteration just a little bit over a year ago, and we have about 1,400 people enrolled in that program. And so that means that they are paying half fare for our rides. Again, the county is helping support that. The Community Mobility Coordinator is a position we've had for a long time, essentially a travel and training coordinator. And they work with folks in your agencies, at Polk County Health, at different locations, at Broadlawns, other places to identify people. A lot of times we work a lot with new refugees, that sort of thing, who need to learn how to ride the bus and or need help with language. And they do a lot of training in senior facilities, all of that. That is a shared partnership that is half DART, half Polk County to support that. Also, the two other partnerships, Unlimited Access, all of your employees have access to DART. We work with your Human Services Department on that. And then certainly our emergency management partnership is really important. There have been a lot of times when we have an emergency in the community where a bus is needed. And rather than everybody calling us, if Polk County Emergency Management authorizes it, then we have the ability to help in that situation and we work together on it. For example, the Pleasant Hill tornado, we needed to provide a bus to help some people in that situation. There's a fire at 3 a.m., we come in and get a bus to make sure people have a warm place to sit. So that's been an important partnership. And you can see here one of your residents, or one of the West Des Moines Polk County residents who relies on the bus to get to meal sites and some of her other connections. Again, we know that for our aging population, those connections in our community are really important. So that's a little bit about that, about Polk County's relationship with DART. I do want to acknowledge, DART's been in the news a lot the last year. And we also know there's been a lot of different perspectives on what DART could be doing to better serve our community. And we really, both we as staff and the commission, have taken that into account, not just the last year, but for years. A few things that we have been doing to reflect what we have heard. The commission went through re-governance in about 2017-18, and the new formation of that made sure that each of our member communities had a seat at the DART commission table. That was important. Then that new commission went through and did work on a new property tax formula that aims to better align the cost to a community with the benefit that community receives. We're about halfway through the implementation of that new formula, so it is not completely implemented. We've also been working on bus fleet diversification. Where are small buses needed? Where are big buses needed? Do we have the right bus in the right place? We've been testing on demand as well. We've had 3 on-demand pilots, 2 of which we learned didn't work, and learned a lot from that, and that we will apply as we move forward. The one remaining one in Ankeny is thriving, and if you've seen the news, there's people asking to get more of that service as well. So just talking a little bit more about that formula and Polk County's investment. So the way the formula works is that there is a total amount of local property taxes that is needed to fund DART's budget. And the local amount is in line with what happens in other communities. Public transit is usually largely funded 60 to 80% locally for operating, and then capital is funded about 80% from the federal government. So that's how the 2 line up. So that amount we need locally, that gets broken off the top, and you can see here an example from our FY25. In the new formula, we're not totally there, we're partway there. Des Moines pays a certain amount off the top. And then the rest of the member communities pay based on a mix of their population and how much service they get. So under that new formula, Polk County's levy rate, and again, you're really paying for the unincorporated parts of Polk County, has decreased from 54 cents to just under 49 cents. So a $200,000 homeowner contributes about $45 a year.
The decrease in the rate, Amanda, from 54 to 48, what does that represent in terms of real dollars to you?
I can follow up with you on that and have it. I know we have the math, I just don't have it off the top of my
Okay.
head. So
And
we'll
when-
get that to you.
And that's between FY '21 and '25?
Correct.
When did that decrease from 54 to 48? Has it been
All at one time or?
all at one time, or was it done over a period of years?
Yeah, we'll follow up on that. I do know there have been years where we've been able to decrease more, and then years where it hasn't been as possible. So
Okay.
it depends so much on our budget and then valuations. Again, what that local levy rate is depends a lot on what's happening with valuations for the folks, for each individual community. So we'll get you those details. Also, that new formula is currently scheduled to be fully implemented in FY29. And so we do have some projections which we'll be sharing with the commission as we work on the future as to what we expect for total contribution. Again, the exact levy rate depends on so many factors that we don't like to forecast that 5-10 years in advance, but we do work on this is how much each of our member communities contributes.
Okay.
So we can get you some of that, and the commission will be seeing more on that in the days and months to come. As I mentioned at the beginning, we do take efficiency very seriously, and if you want an hour-long presentation on efficiency, I could talk to you about all the things we do, but a couple of things I wanted to note. One, some of the things we look at are really comparing ourselves to other agencies, because public transit is public for a reason, right? I'm not gonna make money. Public transit doesn't, there's a reason public transit is public transit. So when we're looking, we're saying, how is our agency comparing to other agencies? And one of the ways we do that is the bus operating cost per mile. And so you can see here that the industry average is about $12 and ours is $8.50. So that and many other metrics, we work with other agencies to track and really make sure and see where are we doing well and where aren't we and where do we need to work. Also, as I came on last year, I came on as DART CEO just a little over a year ago, I knew it was a very clear message that we need to look where we can to find expenses to cut. If you remember, there were lots of conversation on cutting service. The only service we ended up having to cut was the D line, which stopped in November. We did also cut about $1 million worth of administrative expenses, cut several support positions. We eliminated Wi-Fi on vehicles, and we reduced our customer service hours. Now, each of those things does have an effect, right? We're not, they all affect the customer, and they affect our staff, and there's some fewer things we're able to do, but as we were looking at it, our primary service is the service on the road. And so we are looking to do whatever we can to prioritize as much money as possible going into service on the road. But that is also why when we look at the future, there's not a lot of easy options for saving money. The options really involve the level of service that we provide. So with that, we have been having a lot of conversations, which you've probably heard bits and pieces of. One thing we did this last year, which was a survey of all of our member elected officials, and I know several of you responded, and we really looked to see where is there alignment between where our member communities and where isn't there alignment, because we can't be everything to everybody. We'll never be successful at that. We really heard here that there is alignment that transit is an essential service. We really want as a community to prioritize it for where we need it for economic development and for people who don't have other options. That's some of what we heard. But then you'll see this slide got into looking at different hypothetical networks. And you can see that those hypothetical networks between all of our elected officials were pretty evenly divided. And so we found there are a few areas we agree, and there's a lot of areas where there's not consensus. And that comes to what we're trying to do with Reimagine DART. We know a lot has changed in our region. Many of our suburbs have more thriving downtowns. We know COVID has changed how people have traveled. There just continues to be lots of changes. And as we look at that and we look at wanting to ensure that we have a strong organization and a strong service that people can depend on, those service cut conversations are painful. We don't want to go through that every year or two. We want that sustainability. So first, we're having conversations on what are those shared goals. The commission has had a couple of workshops on those. The goals that have risen to the top have been economic impact, social equity, and then local community return on investment. What's my community get out of it? We're continuing to talk on that. Our actually consultants on our network redesign will be talking, coming in next week, and we're beginning work on that. We have a cabinet of community leaders who are part of that, as well as our commissioners. And then county and city staff have also been invited to participate in a variety of events happening next week, so that we are getting input from elected officials, planners, community leaders, and really thinking about all of those trade-offs. And then that will all be brought together to put together some draft plans that the public will respond to later this spring. The whole idea being that by next December, it's a pretty tight time frame, the commission votes on what that new network looks like, so that as we work on our budget for FY27, we want to make sure we have responded to what we've heard, and we have a system that everyone can continue to be proud of, to support, and supports our region for years to come. So the next year is going to be a lot of work for our commissioners. There will be opportunities for elected officials to be involved. There'll be some other open workshops. There'll be some information we share with you. But again, as we wrap up, I just want to say, thank you for the investment. I really see the partnership between Polk County. Again, we see lots of people who are just relying on this service, relying on that Ride to Thrive program. So thankful for the Veterans Program. And, we're really doing it, that working together on it really makes it more efficient. And I appreciate your investment and would love to hear, what you all want to see out of a future system, and questions you have, and continue to work with you to make sure that, again, DART's sustainable for years to come. Thank you, and take questions.
Thank you, Amanda, and thanks for the presentation. And I apologize if I missed this in my previous role, but I think your presentation today has answered my question, but I want to give you an opportunity to just further expand on it. But in your reference to bus rapid transit and free ridership in other regions, you use the word compete as a region. And I think what you mean by compete as a region is providing high quality services in our region. It's not that we're competing with Minneapolis or anything like that. It's your use of compete as a region.
Yeah, and that's a great one. I won't bother scrolling with that one. I think there's a couple of things to think about with compete. Again, it is thinking about the residents we're attracting, right, and what those residents want and need, and then it's thinking about the businesses we're attracting. And so we know more and more site selectors are requiring public transit as a requirement, for example, when Amazon came into Bondurant. So as we look at competing for what we want our community to be and the role public transit plays, to me, it isn't like, yeah, we have to have that same service. Those are different examples of what communities are doing to invest in public transit. There's different ways you can invest. The free fares is something a variety of agencies across the country have been providing in order to test out how that helps people. It's amazing how many people we have who can't afford our fare. And so that's been a pilot we're seeing across states. I'm not saying it's something we need to do here. I'm not sure I would even suggest it, but it is how do we support as a region when we're trying to get businesses, people in, and I know I heard at a recent meeting from a disabled person who moved here from Lincoln because our hours of service on the bus were longer than they were in Lincoln. Right, and so when we're looking at the diversity of people we want to bring to our community and businesses, what is the role of public transit? And then what do we want for public transit in the years to come?
All right, thank you for expanding on that.
The question I have as it relates to the reimagined DART, when you set the table for the consultant to come in, did you indicate to them what the current formula is and what the current budget is? And were those the parameters that they're to reimagine DART within, or were they asked to reduce the amount of your budget and assume there would be less funding moving forward?
Great question. And we have been looking at all three options, what a reduced budget would look like, what a status quo budget. When I say status quo, meaning it grows just enough to cover inflation, and then what a growth system would look like. The commission is voting along the way on what those parameters are. The commission decided for this first parameter to keep a cost neutral perspective because this first set of decisions is really about choices and trade-offs. So for example, do we as a region want a focus on a few high ridership routes? Do we want to focus on making sure every community has something? What ridership versus coverage, some of the trade-offs of when we provide service. So for this first round, the commission chose that to just so the focus was just on what are the trade-offs as we look at it, what do we want for our region? That's what this first part is about. And then later this spring, the commission will be voting on the budget parameters for the system as a whole. And there's a variety of things we're looking at with that, and that will be up to the commission.
The next question I had, in terms of the cities that have indicated to you they're going to opt out, what did that do to the overall budget as it relates to their contribution? Did you reduce the amount that you will have going forward based upon?
Yeah, so we have two communities who are in the midst of the withdrawal process. Grimes is scheduled to withdraw at the end of this summer, so end of June, which is end of our fiscal year. And so our budget for next year incorporates not having Grimes in that. And then Pleasant Hill has signaled they're going to withdraw. There are some things that Pleasant Hill has asked for that, again, with Reimagine DART, and it would be similar to what we've heard Grimes ask for, and are there other options? Like, hey, say we wanted this. Some communities are wanting more control over their choices. Like, I don't want a fixed route, but I really want paratransit service. So we're looking at those options. So I would like to think we can come up with options that make people want to be a part of DART rather than get out. And so that is one of our goals. But as we work right now, I know we are working on our 5-year budget plan. And in that, we took Pleasant Hill out. Like for those we know who have issued it, we're going to plan that they're not there. And, and there's a trade-off there because yes, we lose some expenses because they do have service that we're no longer providing. At the same time, everybody is contributing a little bit regionally, so then some of that regional gets spread amongst everybody else. But again, we've been able to do that. Last year, some communities saw a very minor levy increase depending on where they are in the formula. Some saw decreases. So we're trying to minimize that impact as much as possible. But certainly it is why we all need to be a part of it. And I think that when communities withdraw too, it isn't the impact to just that community. As we've been working on the communication on the Grimes withdrawal, one of the challenges we see is even if Grimes comes up with a separate solution for their residents, there's residents from Urbandale and Ankeny that are going into Grimes that we no longer, we either have to figure out a different mechanism to pay for it, or those people don't have that service. And those are some of the conversations the commission is having. So the member community withdrawal, it really does have a ripple impact. And that's one of my goals as CEO is to try and get to a point that people don't want to drop out.
That makes sense. The next question I had, did the city of Des Moines fund a point-to-point study or an on-call study? And if so, was that separate and apart from Reimagine DART? And
Yep.
and what did they spend on that study, and what were the results? Or has it been completed? I don't even know. I
Yeah,
haven't seen
yeah,
anything.
they did, and I know as they were, because the city is still considering whether or not to do a franchise fee, and we know, any member community that has to consider raising taxes, it's a hard conversation. And so they worked with an organization called VIA, who is actually a technology organization we work with on our on-demand services. So we already have a relationship with them. They did do a study looking at the efficiencies of our service, where on-demand could either help, whether it would cost more, whether it would cost less. And the study was wrapped up, I believe it was early December. And so that is done and available. As to what it said, I want to be thoughtful that that's the city's report and not my report. I do think, and we, Mayor Bozen and Scott Sanders and I had conversations, it did show that we're running a pretty efficient system. Like there's options in areas that aren't served that could benefit from on-demand, but it would come at an increased cost. They did not find significant opportunities to save costs. There's opportunities to improve service, but with additional costs. So that's my high-level summary, but I know the city has the report if that is something you're interested in seeing. I did send it to the commissioner, so I might be free to share it, but again, I just want to be cognizant.
That's fine. I knew they were talking about it, and I didn't know whether it got funded or whether they moved forward with it because of the Reimagine DART. I wondered if it kind of got confused. Were they doing that, or were we?
Yeah, they wanted to have something from them within their parameters, and then we are using the information to inform Reimagine DART as well. So that information has been passed on to our consultants and shared. It's incorporated into it, yeah. Yep,
Okay.
so we're not planning any changes based on their study. We're taking that study, taking what we hear through Reimagine DART, and then forming what the new will look like.
And I guess the final question I have is what are the minimum requirements to stay certified as a federal transportation network for DART, and are those incorporated into any of the efficiency models? Are there minimum things we have to do or services we have to provide to qualify for that 80% on the capital? Because they're helping us build a garage, they're helping us buy buses.
Yes.
What are their requirements for the region?
Yes, and and I'll say, I think just acknowledging too where we're at as a country, and Supervisor Altringer and I had a side conversation a few weeks ago about federal regulation, right? And where does that play in, and where is there opportunity for change, and how do we look at the system with that? So there is a lot of areas of federal regulation, some of which, even if we didn't, get their capital money, we would still have to abide by, like ADA regulations, security regulations. Just to be an FTA certified agency, we go through a triennial review every 3 years. You have to be an FTA certified agency to get any funding. We get that capital. We also get about $3.5 million of operating funds as well. So some of those, even if we chose to try and do some things outside of the FTA rules, there's some that we won't be able to get away from. Some of the things we are looking at, and we are having conversations with our lobbyists too about this. This is a conversation within every industry right now. We know the new administration wants to look at where can we deregulate. Some of the areas we see opportunity, like you look at charter rules. One of the examples is I'm often asked, where could we help with special events and provide more special event service to people? There are charter rules that really inhibit what we can do around that. We've also been asked, there's some rules as it relates to how we utilize our vehicles in other ways, and if those vehicles are paid for at all by federal funding, that limits some of our ability of how else we use them. I also think there's a variety. We've put together and been working with our lobbyists in a list of ways we think we could simplify regulation That said, it's not going to be completely, it's not ever going to go completely away. A few of those things are always going to stay. And for us, it's figuring out, we've also are looking at and watching what other agencies do in terms of some agencies really separate out their operations between operations that are federally funded and operations that aren't. There's downsides to that, right? If I have a bus and I want to run it for a special event that the federal government doesn't support, but I'm not going to use that bus the rest of the year. I need it on the FTA service the rest of the year. So there's lines here. There's also going to be some decisions, and this is something to think about as a county as it relates to the federal regulations, as it relates to our paratransit service. So paratransit services we talked about the service that we contract with you all for, where you identify someone needs it and we provide the trip. And that's a contract between us. There is a federal requirement around paratransit that for every fixed route, you have to provide somebody who cannot use that route or get to that bus stop a door-to-door service if they live within 3/4 of a mile and during the times that bus route runs. Years and years and years ago, as long as DART has been formed, elected officials have chosen to go above and beyond that because it is just such a focus in our community. And so we provide, as an example, in Ankeny, we provide, the Route 98 is the only route that comes all the way downtown, and the Route 4. The Route 98 and the Route 4, they don't operate all day. So we technically don't need to offer paratransit all day or on the weekends, but we do. We know Ankeny residents need to get to church. They need to get to other activities. We've decided as a region that's important and we're gonna pay for it. But with an aging population and an increasingly disabled population, the costs of that service are going up. And so that is also where there's a component of federal regulations, and there's times where we have chosen as a community to go above and beyond them, and for all good reason. But as we look at the future budget, we need to, the commission will need to be having more conversations on whether we revisit any of those prior conversations.
And we'll have to wait and see what the administration does.
Yes.
That's the big piece.
Yes.
We don't know.
Yep. Anything else?
Anything else?
You look.
Well, no, I actually want to say thank you, because I came in with a lot of questions. You're very knowledgeable, you answered a lot of them. I'd be interested to maybe have further conversations with you, sidebar, or not sidebar, but like, more specific to my district and what the use is, the budget that comes out, but that's not something that everyone's going to be interested in.
Yep.
The lobbying is going to be regulation. You and I have spent years talking about what you said that you passed the consultants to, like right size community, what did every community need? And if regulations are pulling that up, that's going to hurt more than just the community convention that pulled out.
Yep.
So don't see it as that, there's something that we can do to help on that or work through those conversations. Please let us know.
I appreciate that.
Like I said, at some point I'd love to sit down and talk to you specifically about the district too, and how, what the impact looks like.
I'll follow up with you on that, so.
Good job, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you for the
Appreciate it.
support, and if you have follow-up questions or you hear anything as we move along with Reimagine DART, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for the update.